Hey everybody, it's Tracy. And in light of the FTX disaster, there's been all these calls for greater regulation of crypto and crypto exchanges in particular. And, the funny thing is that there's already in the United States regulation, right? Like, you want to be a crypto exchange, it's mostly governed by the states because you have to obtain a money transmitter license or a crypto license from each one of those states. And that's not likely to change. Now, states can modify or adopt more crypto specific licenses, which makes a lot of sense because money transmitter licenses are sort of antiquated and not very applicable to digital assets. But at the federal level, all you're really asking for when people say we need more clear regulation is additional regulation, right? And so the main regulatory entity behind all this is really the CFTC and not the SEC. And that's because your primary cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, have already been deemed to be commodities. But the limitations of the CFTC are actually somewhat limited because Bitcoin by itself may be a commodity, but the CFTC's purview to regulate it only applies to derivative contracts like options and futures, which is what's called a commodity interest, or fraud or manipulation in the trading of digital commodities like Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? So if you're doing futures contracts, for instance, right, you would need to become a FCM, a futures commodity merchant, right, and register with the CFTC and NFA, National Futures Association. And it kind of extrapolates from there. Same with swaps, options, any derivative contract, right, requires a license. The trading itself, right, of just commodity, like Ethereum and Bitcoin, doesn't trigger any regulation. But what's interesting is that market manipulation does. So to the extent that you were able to take a true utility token, which is likely to be a commodity, and then manipulate that market through any artifice, whether it be fraud or you corner the market or front running or any of these things that go on in the regular equity markets every day and nobody does anything about them, right? The CFTC could conceivably have civil or even criminal purview over the perpetrator of that manipulation, right? So it's really kind of lax, right? Because commodities, if you think about it, a commodity could be a bushel of corn. Well, if I want to buy a bushel of corn from a farmer, right, as long as he can deliver it within 28 days, so it's not a futures contract, there's no regulation, nor should there be. It doesn't make sense, right? It's just a simple interest in property, right? A simple property transaction. So the same holds true for Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, go on down the road. Now the SEC's interplay is really just on the focus of what's an investment contract and a security token, right? So the Ripple case, for instance, they're looking at Ripple and saying, all right, Ripple is a security and, the exchanges are at fault because they're making markets and that would require them to be national securities exchanges. And when Ripple did an ICO, they didn't follow the tenets of Reg D. So this SEC is coming in more on the token level, whereas the CFTC is on, your standard bearer cryptos and then the exchange level, right? And then the states also govern the exchange level, along with FinCEN as a money service business. So really this call and this gut reaction, which I get, for FTX, is for quote unquote clearer regulation, but the regulation is already there, right? The regulation is already there. And it's driven by the SEC or the CFTC, and it's driven by the states. It's not driven by the SEC because the SEC is looking at individual tokens and saying this is a security, this isn't, right? And then looking at how those tokens were sold. So there really is no purview at it. And you'll never see, because it's a state's right, it's almost a constitutional rights issue, where the federal government can usurp the power of the states to regulate crypto exchanges. They can always add to the regulation, but they're not going to be able to strip the states away from their ability to regulate, right? That's how it is with everything. Like, you need a mortgage license, you go state by state. You need a real estate license, you go state by state. That's how it is, right? It's 10th Amendment stuff. So when you're looking at, like projects and coins and all that, and you're looking at like the landscape and trying to project out where things really are, it's really looking at the CFTC and their role, right? And what constitutes a commodity interest, which is derivatives and derivatives alone, not spot trading in non-security tokens. So definitely hit me up if you have any questions, Adam@adamtracy.io, and I'll talk to you next time. Cheers.